Do you guys have a production schedule online anywhere?
No, we do not, because it is always subject to change. And it's hard enough answering technical questions and caliber requests. I'm talking about you. You should say Western guys. That's been, there's been a lot of those. So
Yeah,
and we appreciate it. It does help us focus on where we need to be looking. Right?
well, if you have a successful single day run in August, there, I'll take your production for that day.
Donald Trump here. We ran right over Nikki Haley. Sleepy Joe, wakey, wakey. We're coming for you next. But I'm here to endorse the Shoot to Hunt podcast. It's the best. Just ask the people, look at the people, the beautiful peoples. Give it up for Jake, the bearded giant, and Ryan, the elk slayer.
We got Greg and Chris from ADG Brass on the show today. No Marlin. If you go back to the Avery Adventures podcast, probably a year or two ago.
Is that still a thing?
Oh, it's still up. I listened to it last night when I was hiking.
Nice.
And we covered a lot of things. We covered case hardness. We covered, the drawing cycle from that little puck of brass. So we'll link that in the bottom. We don't have to rehash all that, but there's lots of questions. I know Jake has lots. I asked the Rockslide listeners if they had any, and we got you some questions. Hopefully you have answers.
Well, we'll do our best to answer.
Well, why don't we just start off, let you guys introduce yourselves and maybe what you do at ADG, how long you've been there, all that good stuff.
Yeah, hi, I'm Greg Dennison. I'm one of the owners of ADG. I am the principal engineer involved on the ammunition side of the business. Currently ADG doesn't load ammunition. We only make cartridge brass. That's kind of my area of expertise. I spent 20 plus years at Remington Arms doing the same job.
Nice. So how many years you got now total?
We're 10 years here at ADG now. So.
Damn, 30 years. Nice.
Founded the company founded in 2015 here at ADG.
Nice.
Are you guys finding any free time now that that brass I'm sure is really slowed down,
It's slowed down slightly, but honestly, we still have a huge back order and backlog that we're trying to work through. So
nice.
At least it's not climbing exponentially like it was in the past.
Yeah.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. We made some production improvements and efficiency improvements that we're able to make more for the same period of time. That coupled with a little bit slacking in the demand is helping there.
Yeah. What are your top three most requested or most orders in the bank for right now? Top three cartridges.
Going off the top of my head, don't quote me. 6.5 PRC, 7 SAUM, and
maybe 7
300 PRC. Or I take that back, 7 PRC.
Yeah, 7 PRC. Okay. Pretty much the same thing on our side. I think that 7 PRC has been overshadowing 7 SAUM quite a bit the last 6 to 12 months or so. I know that
I'd say it definitely overshadowed the 28 Nosler.
Oh, it about killed that. I have a lot of your 28 Nosler brass sitting on my shelf right now. It's gathering dust up there. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you guys have somebody asked a question about, do you guys have an amp? We're jumping right into it here because probably got a lot of questions less than an hour.
Let Chris, I don't think Chris introduce himself.
Sorry. I always get ahead of myself.
My name's Chris Ordway. I'm also one of the owners of the company, and my title is VP and General Manager of the case line operation here. I work closely with Greg and also with Michael Riggs, one of our process engineers, managing the operation side of case line business.
Okay. And how many total guys do you have there at ADG now?
Total?
Yeah.
I don't know, 40?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're in terms of full-time employees, we're right around 35 employees. And in the brass line area of the business, we operate 2 shifts, and about 15 individuals in the case line operation, including Greg and myself and Michael Riggs, whom I just mentioned.
Nice.
And they're all 40 aren't owners, correct?
No.
It's a profit sharing.
It's a profit sharing.
Profit
business.
sharing, yeah.
Do you guys?
It depends on who you ask.
There you go.
Do you guys run like shift like 24/7? Do you guys run 12-hour days? Every day of the week? How does it run there?
We run an 18-hour production day in the case line area. 2 shifts. We start the line at 6 a.m. and run through the midnight hour, Monday through Friday. And we picked up that 18-hour shift earlier this year. In 2023, we migrated to a 16-hour 5-day per week production cycle. Prior to that, we were running Monday through Thursday and alternating Fridays. So we have systematically increased our schedules and production days, adding that routine Friday to meet customer demand while still maintaining our high quality.
Nice.
Do you guys run like one cartridge a day, like you just run 300 Ultra one day, or do you have multiple lines running different cartridges?
Yeah, we just have the one line.
Okay.
So, unless there's a changeover going through, every machine's making that one product.
Okay.
Right. And then we get to the end of that production run, then we'll change over the first machine in the line, the draw one. And once all those parts are through, and so basically we try to limit our downtime, is what I'm saying on the changeovers. Changeovers usually happen fairly fast. Most of the time we have 2 products on the floor at any given time, depending on the total volume of each product that we're making. Right now we've got actually maybe 3 products total on the floor.
And you guys don't maintain any inventory in house, or you try not to?
We try not to. We have, this past year we went to, basically push everything that we had out to our dealers. We didn't keep any inventory, the last 2 years, I guess. Really didn't have anything on our website for sale, etc. This past 6 months or so, that's changed a little bit. We still push everything out to our dealers first. And then after a period of time, I forget what it is, 6 months, 3 months, something like that, let them push that product to their customers. And then we have, 5 or 10% of the total run that we do that we set aside for our website sales.
Nice.
So right now, if you go to the website, there is product in inventory on the website as I speak. Don't quote me on every one, but I'm sure there's some 28 Nozzler on there. Probably some 6.5 PRC on there, I think. Some of the Ultra Mags, maybe. But you just go to the web store, and any of the icons that show up bigger than the others are generally the ones that we have in stock.
Okay. And I think we talked before at the SHOT Show, and you were saying I think 18,000 pieces a day is about what you guys are running.
Thereabouts. It depends on the product.
So there is a difference between a smaller cartridge versus a larger cartridge and how many you can produce a day?
To some degree, yes.
Okay.
But we're mainly limited by the cycle times of the machines more so than product.
Okay. All right. Take it away, Ryan. I know you're itching over there.
I got a few questions and mostly revolve around my selfish needs.
Oh, here we go.
So it'll be the 6UM, which you guys talked about with Jake at the SHOT Show. Basically, it's neck down 6.5 SAUM to 6mm. The debate is you guys say you guys can do it, and you guys are trying to figure out if you can actually make it 6mm actual diameter. Is that something you guys have figured out if you can do yet or not?
We have not figured out that we could do that yet. The 6.5 is a challenge in and of itself. Not to say that the 6mm is going to be impossible, but kind of getting back to some of the topics maybe to discuss here, wildcats and shoulder angles, and this would be a good segue into that. The smaller the diameter of your neck or the caliber that you're doing, and the larger diameter of the shoulder or the base diameter of the shell, that makes that shoulder that much longer. The longer that shoulder is, the harder it is to taper and form it properly. And the steeper that angle is, the more of a challenge it is. So, making a shell that has a 20-degree shoulder is much simpler than making a shell that has a 40-degree shoulder.
Interesting. So if you're saying that if it has and I am not a engineer by any means, if it has a 35-degree shoulder, it's easier to make a 6 millimeter than it is if it was a 40-degree shoulder? Or if it's
slightly, yes.
If it's a 30-degree shoulder, it's easier and it just goes down from there.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if it was a 10-degree shoulder, even more easy, right? So it just goes to the forces involved in how they translate into the brass of the shell as you're forming it, right? So the more downward force that you're putting on the sidewalls, the more critical the sidewall thicknesses and anneal temperatures and anneal settings are to form that product. And then obviously the more you form it down, as you know from doing any wildcatting or whatever, brass work hardens. So the more you work it, the harder it gets.
Gotcha. So if you were to say like a percentage of it actually happened being a 6 millimeter case at the end, what do you think that is?
I guess I didn't quite understand your question.
What do you think the likelihood of it being a 6 millimeter diameter when we're done here?
Better than 50-50.
Oh, I like those odds. You're saying
so you're saying there's a chance. Those are great odds. Those are great odds.
Yes, they are great odds.
And I think as we talked, Greg, that you guys were going to be doing SOMs again. Was it the June timeframe?
I believe SOMs are in August.
August. Okay. So is it realistic to say that you will have attempted to make it a 6 millimeter for that run in August?
I will probably do my initial EX run trials during that production setup. Yes.
Nice. There you go. Well, either way, we're gonna whether it makes it to a 6 initially or not, we're definitely still in for a batch for sure. I would say that if you're able to get it down to 6, we would probably take a couple days of production. Otherwise, we'll probably just take one day if it's still a 6.5.
Correct.
And then put in for 2 days the next go around. Of course, beggars can't be choosers, and
the way that we typically do things, guys, is we'll do an experimental run, where I'm just in the machine when we're not under production, so to be on a Saturday or whatever, and I'm just putting in my tools that I designed, figuring out what the settings need to be, what the anneal settings need to be, what the punch diameters need to be. Whether or not there's any surface finishes that need to change. There's a whole myriad of black art kind of things that happen in forming brass and production. And the experimental runs, I'll figure those out. I'll figure those things out, hopefully. An experimental run, I'll do 500 pieces, 1,000 pieces, just to kind of prove out the tooling. And then once we're happy with that and we do some testing, brass, reforms fine, reloads fine, etc. Then we'll come back in and we'll do a low rate, initial rate production, where we'll do a day's worth of a run, just to kind of work out any of the kinks on the process side of things. Is there anything different about how it feeds? Is there anything different about, do I need a new plate to feed it into the machine? Do I need to change something because the angle is a little different or the mouth's smaller? Those kinds of things, as that causes problems in the feeding basically side of the production. Then once we get through the LRIP, then the next time we come around, then we're set to run full on production.
Nice.
I'm just happy that there's a chance. So, your question?
No, I thought you got a list of shit. Go ahead.
I do.
We're talking shoulder angles, wildcats, neck sizing, all that kind of shit.
Well, if you have any questions about that, because I have a different question.
Oh, you're gonna. Okay, so how about when you guys when you're going from a 7 to a 6.5 or a 6.5 to a 6, do you take additional? In other words, there's going to be more brass buildup in a 6mm than there would in a 7mm, you know, given the same amount of material that was left there. So as you guys are
Yes.
necking down from a 7 to a 6.5 or to a 6, are you removing any additional material there during that process?
We don't remove material during the forming operation of the neck and the shoulder. If we needed to make a change there, you're basically going all the way back to, 2 or 3 operations back on the draw side and making your draw piece thinner or thicker.
And it would have to be thicker or thinner for the whole tube length on the draw.
Correct.
Okay. So it should be safe to say then that smaller diameter necks have a tendency to be thicker than larger diameter necks just by design.
Yeah, I mean, again, all things being considered, a lot of people will make Wildcats and they'll neck turn the brass. We got our Wildcat is perfect. It has a 12 thousandths neck thickness. Well, the thinnest that I make coming off of my draw operation is probably on the order of 8 thousandths. And that thickens up as you're tapering it down. And the smaller you taper it down, the more it thickens up.
Yeah.
Right. And right now, my 6.5 Psalm is probably on that thinnest side of things. So your 6mm, it's going to be what it's going to be from that 6.5 draw piece.
So it's basically saying he's restricted even how thin he can make it because of how thin the initial tube can actually be as it builds up to whatever neck diameter you're doing. He hits a wall where there's really no choice at that point. It can only be a certain
right.
thickness.
You end up, you can try to go a little thinner, but you end up with your scrap rate basically increases exponentially on you. And the juice is not usually worth the squeeze.
As far if I remember measuring properly, I think that neck thickness on most ADG brass ends up being like 14 or 15 thou.
Again, it's dependent upon the cartridge.
Each cartridge.
I've got some that are probably down in the 13 range. I think my new 765 PRCW is about 13, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I've got other brass that it could be 16-ish or so. The 6.5 Psalm comes to mind.
Okay.
In that, you probably know, you've probably done some measurements on that more so than me recently on the 6.5 Psalm, but it's probably on the order of that 15 to 17 thousandths wall thickness already.
Yeah, the reason I was asking about that is because on our side making Wildcats, if you're grabbing something that's 7 mil like a 7 PRC, and we're trying to make a dummy round and we're squeezing all the way down to 6, is it too thick at that point? Because you don't have a choice. We're not neck turning before we get a reamer made and things like that, but.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you're probably as close as you can be to what I would do in production. The opposite comes in to be a problem. So let's say you had a 7 PRC and you wanted to neck it up to a 338, for example.
Oh yeah.
And you did that, and you end up with the wall thickness is going to be about what your 7mm was more than likely. However, if I want to make that in production. Then my wall thickness, as I form it to 338 instead of 7mm, the neck wall thickness will be thinner, given the same draw piece for the 338 than it was for the 7, because I'm not necking it down as far. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Totally.
And luckily for this particular situation with the 6.5 Psalm down to the 6 there's no big brass change. It would be the same way for you in production as we made it for our Wildcat. He's just going to squeeze it one more step. He's not going to change the tube thickness, So it should be the same as what we're doing.
I hear ADG's the greatest brass producers of all time. If they can't do it, nobody can. That's what I hear.
Well, I've been doing this my entire career in the small arms industry since 1995. So I started at Remington doing cartridge design for the ammunition development, and I've developed a bunch of cartridges over my career. I've introduced, I don't know, 10 or so cartridges into SAMI myself through Remington. And I've probably done tooling to get new products in production for probably another 15 shells above that.
Nice.
So, the cartridges that I didn't design, but I designed the tooling to make it in production.
Nice.
I'm liking what I hear. I'm liking it.
And we haven't, I'm still going.
I'm still going. I do have one question about shoulders real quick.
Yeah, go.
Do you guys currently produce any cartridges with 40-degree shoulder, like AI shoulders?
We do. We currently make Sherman Wildcat shells, the Sherman shorts, and the Maxes. We currently make as 40-degree shoulder, very limited body taper. But all those, I believe, we make to 7 millimeter.
Yeah, I was going to say
diameter.
he's stuck at 7 millimeter. You either get a 40 with a 7, or you can get a 30 with a 6.
I'll take the 6. We'll fire form it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. We haven't seen standard case head cartridges from you guys in quite a long time. Is there any plans? We have customers that have developed loads over the years. We talked a little bit about this at SHOT Show, but is there any chance that this year or next year our customers going to see some of those Creedmoors and 308s and that kind of thing again from you guys?
There's a chance that those will come back for sure, especially as we start to eat away a little bit more on our backlog of Magnums. However, we're going to probably take the opportunity, especially since it's been several years since we've made them, to kind of tweak our production process, because it was kind of a hodgepodge of a few different things of what we inherited from our OEM manufacturer of the equipment, to some things that I designed myself, and trying to make things work here and there. We'll probably go back in and revisit the entire process. So the shells themselves may or may not, depending, change a little bit. If they change a lot, then we'll have some warnings or something somewhere that says, hey, the shell that this 6.5 Creedmoor shell is different than the 6.5 Creedmoor shell that you've had in the past from ADG, et cetera.
Your granddaddy's Creed.
Just pay attention to ADG itself.
Okay.
The goal obviously is to not make any changes that would affect the end user. It's hopefully the changes will all just be on the process side of things internally for us.
We're flipping. Jake's usually the one. I usually keep Jake on course, but Jake's keeping this podcast on course. So, but I have another question. Did you used to work at Remington? Is that right, Greg? Is that what you said?
I did. 20 years.
Yep.
20. So this is a very good question, because it's literally brought up a couple times, and I've noticed this when I'm making 6UMs, and people are making 6UMs off of other people's brass. But it goes back to what I've noticed in 300 Ultra. What do you guys do different with your primer pockets that make them hold on so long? Because I talked to a guy that's running the same load in the 6UM with another person's brass. He's firing what I'm firing. He got one shot out of his and lost his primer pocket. But I noticed also I've shot out a whole bunch of 300 Ultra barrels. Remington, and we'll just go off Remington 300 Ultra, absolutely sucked at holding primer pockets. Yours is fantastic. What is the difference?
The difference there is that all of our products are made. We basically hit the shell twice on the head. You only have basically one opportunity to cold work the brass in the head of the shell, and that is at the heading operation, when you actually put in that primer pocket and put on the head stamp. We actually do what I guess probably started with 7.62 in the military. I think Remington actually introduced it way back when in Bridgeport, and when Remington had Lake City. We call it pocketing. I think the military still calls it pocketing. But basically, I form I put a dimple basically in the end of the shell before I hit it again and form the primer pocket and the lettering. So I'm basically moving the brass twice. And as you know, brass work hardens. So the more I move it, the more it hardens. And so by doing that pocketing operation, our head hardness is above what Remingtons and the Hornadys and Winchesters and those guys do typically. They typically only hit the shell once to form the primer pocket and the lettering on the shell.
Once you hit that twice, that case head's not going through any further annealing throughout the whole process. Is it? The annealing stays towards the top?
Correct.
Okay. So once it's hard there after hitting it twice, it's hard they don't touch it again after that. Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit. Is there, in the last podcast we did, but we'll touch on it again, is there a vast difference in case hardness, kind of like Rockwell hardness, between yours or somebody else's? Do you guys look for a certain hardness to make more consistent brass, or no?
Yeah, there's always variation there depending on people's different production processes and everything else. we typically have values that we try to shoot for that is somewhat uniform across all the different calibers, but different shells may require a little bit different result to give you good product, the product that we want. That's especially important, toward the mid body of the shell and up to the neck of the shell, not necessarily so much at the base of the shell. There's a lot of variation in manufacturers in how they anneal the shells, how far down they anneal the shells, et cetera. We use induction annealing to do all of our anneals for the body anneal and for our finish anneal. I know Remington and the others are probably still using flame annealers, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different process, and it produces a different profile on the shell before it's tapered, and that also results in different hardness values on the finished shell, if you follow.
So I know you guys you have your standard brass that shows the annealing marks on the neck up there, but you also offer a clean version of the brass. Is that actually popular on your guys' side? The people are paying a little bit more for the cleaning at the end there?
It is. And,
Really?
I get asked the question all the time, so I'll say it here on the podcast. All of our brass is annealed after the neck anneal, regardless of whether or not you see the anneal mark or not. Okay. At Remington at the time, when I was there, if Remington made a shell that had the neck anneal visible, then that was the UMC shell. Okay. It didn't get a final wash. It was deemed of less value than the bright shell was.
Huh.
Okay. You have variation. The 338 Mapua and a couple other shells kind of change that. You get with the neck anneal visible, you get more. The oxidation from the anneal is not removed, so you end up with a little more neck tension. All things, everything else being considered being equal, you get more neck tension than on the bright shell. So if you just took a shell that had the anneal visible, and you seeded some bullets and measured bullet pulls, and then you took back shells from the same batch and you just cleaned the anneal out, and we made them into our bright shells, you would see a reduction in bullet seeding forces and also bullet pull forces.
Interesting.
Just because of the loss of that oxidation.
Huh.
What's the breakdown for cells from the bright to the annealed? What percentage?
Definitely the neon visible is far exceeds the amount of bright.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the opposite of what you said. It's actually when it has the anneal mark, it's looked at it as a higher quality brass than not having it. To be honest with you, that might be today's kind of viewpoint.
I don't know if they know this, but once you fire it, it's going to look like shit anyway. So why the hell would you want to get it brightened up?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, we said it at the same time.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Are you done with that's it? That's it?
No. I got more questions, but go ahead.
All right. I want to know, are there any new cartridges coming out by the end of this year, or something that you're looking at for next year? Anything you guys want to let the listeners look forward to?
Sure. We are working on several new products. EX runs are done, as I explained earlier a little bit. We've done experimental runs on the 6.8 Western and the 270 WSM. And we have plans to do experimental run on the 338 Norma Mag toward the end of the year. Those will be the new products that we're working on. I've also got some tooling inbound to conduct an experimental run on making some 300 short action ultra mag. That one should be, knock on wood, fairly simple to do, but it depends on what the neck wall thickness turns out after taper versus SAMI specifications and our internal specifications.
Enhance your shooting experience with Stocky Stocks. Are you tired of struggling with mediocre rifle stocks that hinder your performance? Imagine having a high-quality rifle stock that not only enhances your accuracy, but also provides superior strength and a lightweight build. Stocky Stocks offers a wide range of premium rifle stocks manufactured with hand layup carbon fiber construction, a patented carbon fiber AccuBlock, and multiple finish options. Whether you're a long-range shooter or a hunting enthusiast, our stocks are perfect for you. Experience unmatched precision and durability with Stocky stocks. We provide stock installation instructions, technical support, and guidance to help you choose the right stock for your rifle. Upgrade your shooting game today with Stocky stocks.
This is two-part question. Going back to the kneeling, do you guys tell people to kneel after every firing or every third firing, or what would you guys do?
If you want the most consistent round, reload to reload, I would recommend that you kneel after every fire.
Nice. How about case prep in general? So they got a brand new box of ADG brass just showed up at their house. They're ready to load it. Do you recommend any specific case head treatment there before they load?
Well, case head, no.
Not case. I'm sorry. Case neck.
Yeah, it's fine. I would recommend at least you always do 100% inspection. You're looking for any defects in the brass, any folds, any material inside the shell. We 100% inspect all of our brass, but humans do it, and humans are perfect. So always it's on you. You're going to load it. You're going to shoot it. Please, inspect your brass. At a minimum, as far as preps go, we don't prep our brass. We don't sort our brass for weight. We don't do any of those things at present. At the minimum, I would recommend that you deburr the mouth ID and OD. I would also recommend, if you want that first firing to be as close to your second firing as it can be, I would recommend resizing the brass after you lubricate the brass in your resizing die, because the mouth ID that I provide in the shell is probably different than the mouth ID of what your reloading die is going to produce for you. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and I know you get this question all the time, and the standard question is, how many reloads can I expect to get out of your brass? And of course, we both know that is highly dependent on the pressure of your load and all that good shit. But what is your kind of standard answer that you give guys when they ask that question?
I generally just what you said. It could be 1, it could be 20.
Yeah.
Right. We internally, when I'm doing cartridge development, we do 10 and make sure that we are not seeing any cracking, neck splits. Make sure the sizing things down properly, etc. And we do that without doing any anneals. Again, that's the hardest case scenario on the brass, to make sure that we don't end up with any neck splits. We typically end up adjusting our charge weight some during that test, because brass work hardens and your bullet pull forces increase with each reload, and that increases your pressure and increases your velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever done any testing on cleaning out a primer pocket, or just throwing another primer in there? Any like ES testing at all?
We have not here at ADG. I did some of that way back when at Remington. I honestly, I didn't see any big differences, but in truth, I was looking, more as a hunting round more so than, 1,000-yard F-class round or something like that. Right. So I wasn't trying to look at that level of detail.
That's going to be one of our soon to be tests, is going to be basically dirty versus clean, like going through the entire 1,000-yard bench rest guy process versus just slapping a primer in, loading another, neck sizing and pushing another bullet. And
right.
Of course, I imagine it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, during our 10-round reload test, for development purposes, about the only thing that we end up doing besides obviously resizing them is trimming them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've got to make sure that the trim length is short enough. You're not going to have any interference in the chamber and cause any pressures.
Yeah, especially that first trim after the first firing. Yeah,
interesting test.
Yeah.
I put on Rockslide that we're coming on today with you, and probably the number one question I got through the forum and through PMs is, what you talked about on the 6.8 Western. What is the time frame you'll actually produce and have at Jake's shop a 6.8 Western to sell?
Mm. Well, unfortunately, that's somewhat of a loaded question. It depends on it.
Pun intended.
Yes, it does depend on our load development testing and whatnot. Like I said, I've conducted an experimental run to make the brass as we speak. So I've got 500 pieces or so in the back, but it is not completed yet. I have not finished the experimental run complete. So the shell is formed, the shell is trimmed, but I'm still working on the mouth anneal part of the settings, trying to get those right. And then trying to get time in on the production units for the production machines to be able to do so.
Sounds like first quarter next year.
It could be the next opportunity that we have for doing our LRIP run, our 1 day production would be in August, around that August time frame when we're going to make our Psalms and our WSMs.
Okay.
Do you guys have a production schedule online anywhere?
No, we do not, because it is always subject to change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard enough answering technical questions and caliber requests. I'm talking about you 6.8 Western guys. That's there's been a lot of those. So
Yeah.
and we appreciate it. It does help us focus on where we need to be looking. Right?
Well, if you have a successful single day run in August, there, I'll take your production for that day.
Fair enough.
Well said, Jake. I appreciate it.
You called dibs, is that what?
That's that. Yeah, that's what that was.
Exactly.
Nice.
You got any more?
I'm good at the moment. What do you got?
These are a few questions that came in on Rock Slide, and you've answered some, but I'm just going to throw them out there. You can answer them or go away. What is the number one call you get on complaints about your brass being your fault or their fault?
That is an interesting one.
Damaged pre-temp boxes.
Yeah.
Oh fuck, man, that's a good one for me too. You've been doing it longer than us, and you package your shit amazingly well in your 16 case to a box situation. But once it turns around, it comes to us, and then we got to ship it 1 or 2 in a box. But we put a lot of energy and testing into getting because we have our unknown munitions blue ammo boxes are the same berries boxes you're using there. And yeah, broken fucking boxes, man, drives me crazy. Doesn't matter how well you pack them. That shipping guy just throws that shit from one truck to another, and it's almost like you have no chance of success.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
it is amazing that the calls for that goes up in the wintertime. Obviously, when the plastic is more brittle and cold because it's cold, and it is amazing the correlation between the frequency of damaged boxes and the location where that is. That goes back to your to the handling part of it, right? There's something in a chain of handling of parts going to certain vendors that is just exponentially worse than most than 99% of our other vendors. I don't know, it's kind of weird.
No other complaints? Like I sold brass for a while, Bertram brass. I imported and sold it. And the number one people call and say, I had a case head separation. And you always think, well, how far are you bumping that shoulder back? It's like, sure you get some of those calls.
We have, but I'm just saying here, I've answered all kinds of calls. I'm generally the person who is responding to technical issues or technical questions like that. So if somebody does contact ADG, they'll probably be communicating with me. Anything dangerous like that, like a case head separation, I try to make that a priority to try to get back and hold of that person, because obviously that's a big safety problem. Whether or not it's the fault of the brass or the fault of the reloader is somewhat inconsequential. I want to make sure that they're safe. And that they're doing things correctly, and to make sure they don't keep shooting those, because it's bad on guns and it's bad on bad on people. We don't want to let that gas escape when out the breech.
It's almost always
But
not
you
the
know,
brass.
yeah, almost always. Very, 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 very rare instances have I had any inkling that there could have been something in the brass from a production process point of view that caused that problem.
Like if you're out there, I mean, you're a rock slider and you're having case set separations. It doesn't, regardless of the brass manufacturer. Hopefully, you still have a new piece laying around, but you want to measure, at the 200 line on your brass. You want to measure before and after firing. So a brand new piece of brass, and after you fired it, if you have 5 thousandths of expansion, then you have an issue with your chamber. Basically, like there's a lot of testing you could do on your own, always referencing a new piece of brass versus what you're getting out of your gun, and look for any excessive dimensional changes that could result in that case set separation.
Good stuff.
Yeah, the case set separation is typically a length to shoulder issue. Okay, so if we can talk a little bit about SAMI here if you want. I don't know if people know what SAMI is. SAMI is the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute. They have a website at SAMI.org. It's available to the public. I highly recommend that people look at that resource. It's a great resource. I mainly use it for looking at cartridge and chamber drawings. So any round that has been submitted to SAMI has a cartridge defined and a chamber defined, maximum and minimum tolerances and dimensions for both to ensure safe operation between the ammo and the chamber. Okay. Speaking of headspace, most beltless shells, and I'm not talking belted magnums here. I'm talking beltless shells. Any of the rums, the short action ultra mags, 308 family, all those, anything without a belt. Typically speaking, a maximum SAMI cartridge, the length, the shoulder, the headspace, can be up to 4 thousandths longer than a minimum chamber and can be 6 thousandths shorter or so than a maximum chamber. Okay. And, we typically manufacture our brass to SAMI nominal. SAMI allows 7 thousandths of a range on headspace on the cartridge. All right. So we typically try to hit that nominal value for our nominal that we're producing. Obviously, there's always going to be manufacturing variation, and we try to keep the max and the min well within the SAMI limits of max and min, just centered around nominal.
So what you're saying is SAMI is allowing the opportunity for, as a brass manufacturer, for you to correctly manufacture brass that can be 4 thousandths longer headspace than a minimum spec chamber can be. So they're basically setting you up for failure there.
Well, to some degree, yes. And obviously in a bolt gun, I'll go back to shoulder angles again, with the bolt gun with a 20-degree shoulder angle, if you had 2 thousandths of interference between your cartridge and your chamber, the bolt's probably still going to close pretty easily.
Yeah.
If you had that same, 2 or 3 or 4 thousandths interference on a 28 Osler, it's probably going to be a lot harder to close that bolt.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that shoulder angle plays a factor there as well. But yeah, there's 7 thousandths range on length of shoulder on the cartridge, and the gun manufacturers get 10 thousandths of variation there.
Interesting. That SAMI stuff is always interesting.
Well, we try to hold when we're here making a chamber on our side, we try to hold the center of tolerance just to avoid those type of
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I know that on our end at Remington, when we're working on sniper weapon systems for the military, we typically would run the headspace at least minimum to minimum +2 versus allowable would be min +10. So we'd go min to min +2 on the headspace, and then you've got diameter tolerances too. When we talk about SAMI, this all comes back to somewhat of the relationship with the quote unquote clickers, especially with the PRC families and whatnot. For example, Jade, you were mentioning the body diameter at the 200 thousandths from the breech face dimension. Sammy, if you look at any of the Sammy drawings on that website that I just told you about, you'll see that a maximum cartridge is 1/1000th of an inch smaller than a minimum chamber. All right. However, if I make brass that was 1/1000th smaller than minimum chamber, you would probably have a clicker on your very first shot.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brass will expand to the chamber and then it just doesn't spring back as much.
Mm.
So your diameter tolerance that Sammy allows you on the body diameters is 8/1000ths. Okay. So for example, on the PRCs, the maximum cartridge would be 532.532 inches at that 200,000 datum diameter. The chamber in that same area is 533. Okay. The cartridge is a minus 8/1000ths tolerance there, and the chamber is a plus 2/1000ths tolerance. So I hear a lot of people when they talk about, well, I have a Sammy chamber this or I have a Sammy chamber that. That's great, but that means different things to different people. Sammy always has a tolerance range associated with it. So it's important to understand, if you have a minimum chamber, a true minimum chamber as far as your diameters go, and you're on your fifth or your sixth reload on some PRC brass, whether it's ADG brass, I hope, or Hornady brass or Lapua brass or anybody else's, that sidewall hardness that we were talking about before comes into play, and how much your reloading die is sizing that shell down along the body diameter of that of the shell in your reloading die. If the brass is springing back to 532 or 532 and a half after you've resized it and you truly have that 533 minimum chamber, you're probably going to end up having clicker issues. However, if you had a chamber that was, say, Sammy nominal or maybe Sammy maximum at 534 or 535, it's amazing the difference that 0.5 or 1/1000 makes. And it basically equates to a difference of whether or not you have clicker or not.
Would you say that's a flaw that Hornady brought to market, that they could have just put a couple more thousandths and had taken care of it?
No, not necessarily. I think some of it, my experience is that it's not one single thing usually that's causing the clickers. It's usually a combination of things. It's usually, hard brass, combined with a reloading die that's, not sizing the brass down as far as you think it is, and a tight chamber. And, I don't want to disparage any of the gunsmiths, and who are out there, but, there's an old practice, and I hope it's an old practice and not a current practice of, designing a reamer that a gunsmith would use around your brass. That's always a recipe for disaster in the long run, because if anything changes with the brass, then you're going to have problems down the road with that chamber. And that chamber will typically end up being tighter than minimum Sammy chamber. And that just exacerbates all the problems. Like I said earlier, you've got an ammunition manufacturer has an 8/1000ths diameter range to play with on the body diameter of that brass. I'm as a manufacturer, I'm going to try to make all of my brass to be the same diameter there. I don't want to make a change where that diameter is going to be different on this lot versus another lot, those kinds of things. But manufacturer A may make it at a different diameter than manufacturer B. And if you've got that chamber that's tighter than Sammy minimum, and you use manufacturer B whose diameter is 1/1000th or two bigger than the brass that was used by your gunsmith to design your custom chamber, then you're going to end up having problems. That's the benefit of Sammy. Sammy allows a definition of the tolerance ranges and the manufacturing ranges of a cartridge and a chamber. especially on the body diameter of things and the headspace of things. Where the custom guys really shine, and Sammy really can't do that, is in the throat area of the chamber. That's all dependent on, if you want to have a throat that's, different than different for a 180 grain bullet versus a 200 grain bullet. That's fine. But as a gunsmith, I'd recommend that you never make a chamber that has a smaller or shorter freebore length than what Sammy calls for, because then again, you're making a chamber that is below Sammy and could potentially end up having a safety issue with a round of ammunition that was safe in a Sammy chamber, but because there was something about your custom chamber that had a shorter freebore length, that could drastically increase your pressure and cause an unsafe condition.
That's basically putting a round of 5.56 and a 2.23.
Kind of, yep, very analogous.
Yeah. Do you adjust your PRC diameters at the 200 line smaller, knowing that issue was there? Like, are you running it at, if you knew that max was 533 and yours is at 532, are you adjusting that down at all?
We have not made a change to that diameter since our successful experimental run.
Okay. Good deal.
That was a good explanation. I'm paraphrasing. Let me bring this up, but it says this is probably caliber cartridge specific. In a day's run of brass, how many are culled by QC, and what is your QC process? I'm paraphrasing that question.
Yeah. Well, the QC process is actually fairly extensive for us, at least as compared to other manufacturers that I'm privy to how they do it. It depends on the operation. We will typically sample, 5 to 10 shells out of every 500 pieces that we're making, maybe every 1,000 pieces that we're making for any given operation. So you can imagine, on the back end of the line where I basically have a finished shell, I'm taking a lot more dimensions there than I am, say, on the draw side of things, where I'm just, I'm in the process of making a finished shell. So as the shell progresses, there's more and more items that are measured. If you look at that Sammy drawing, there's a tolerance that's called out for the rim diameter. There's a tolerance that's called out for the rim thickness. There's a tolerance that's called out for the extractor groove diameter. All those dimensions are checked and verified during production. Typically, if Sammy allows you a 10,000ths range in anything, for example, I'll pick on the PRC again. The rim diameter is 532 maximum on the cartridge, and that would make the minimum rim diameter to be 522. They have a 10,000ths tolerance. We typically would probably hold that to the upper end by our design, probably around 529 to 531, kind of a range. And every dimension along the shell, the neck diameter, once we get shells that are annealed, one of the checks is measuring the loaded neck diameter. There's some people who feel very strongly about, you want 3,000ths clearance or 4,000ths clearance or what about that. We try to, again, abide by Sammy. So Sammy allows 8,000ths variation on that loaded neck diameter. And we typically will run toward the maximum end of that range for any given cartridge. And again, the relationship between the chamber and the cartridge by Sammy, there's a 1,000ths diameter difference, right? So on the PRC, on the 6.5 PRC, for example, the neck diameter can be 0.299 minimum diameter at the neck shoulder junction. If you have a min chamber and you're talking about, hey, I want to have 3,000ths clearance or 4,000ths clearance, then you're at 295, 296, and that's up toward the upper end of that Sammy allowable cartridge, which is a maximum of 297. We typically run toward the max end of that, but it does vary by cartridge.
And what do you think? What is a common for something that's running really well on the production line? What's a common scrap rate?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't trying to blow that off. I forgot about it. I would say 3 to 5% range. Again, it depends on the product. If I make again 308 Winchester, my scrap rate's probably going to be a lot lower than if I'm making 6.5 Creedmoor or 22 Creedmoor. Right. Again, this always goes back to the shoulder angle and the diameter that you're necking it down to, and the starting diameter. Right. Generally speaking, the more that diameter reduction is, the greater your scrap rate, and the steeper that shoulder angle is, the harder it is to manufacture, and that also increases your scrap rate.
Okay, you already answered this question, but I thought it was funny the way he answered. He says, Ryan, do not let them duck you on this question. When in the hell is 6.8 Western coming out?
Well, I thought I answered it.
You did.
Yes, you did. You
I
did.
just thought it was funny. So
Yeah.
I'll say the same thing as before. We've almost completed with an experimental run. Assuming that proves successful, then the next opportunity to make our initial rate production is in August of this year. But that'll be in limited quantities.
Yeah.
That we'll probably send out for feedback from valued customers and whatnot, valued shooters, some of our sponsored shooters and whatnot. And assuming that we have good feedback from that, then the next time we come around to SOMs and WSMs, we'll be running full production, which will likely be per quarter.
at 6 UMs.
Same time frame.
Hey, it says this is a general question. ADG makes 7 rum brass and 28 Nosler. Why do you not hear more people's exploits with the 7 rum? Watching the podcast, it doesn't seem like overbore is people or hunters are afraid of overbore cartridges. Do you guys know why the 7 rum isn't more popular? I got my ideas. Go ahead and tell me yours.
Well, let's hear your ideas first. That was a cartridge that I was involved with in introducing into Sammy at Remington. But you're not going to hurt my feelings.
I don't think it was throated right. It's you have to, if you can get, first of all, it's really a barrel burner, which I don't care about, but for people never burn barrels down, but it's always their first concern. It's a funny concept. The people I know that have actually burnt barrels down, that aren't comp shooter, are fucking nil. So I don't even think that's a concern. People just make it up in their head, but I don't think it was spec'd right. And you got to throw it in a longer cartridge or a longer chambering to get it to shoot what it can shoot. To a 28 Nosler kind of comes ready to go.
Even 28 Nosler is a little short in the throat area, from a custom high performance standpoint. But I think that 7 rum can be a great cartridge, just like anything else with a custom throat and custom ammo.
You ran like a 180 or 195 and you throwed it right. That sucker is long.
That's another problem is mag feeding at longer length, right? So our 3950 mag will hold that 300 rum with a 215. Similarly, a 7 rum with a 195, you would be able to mag feed it, but only probably in that one option.
In just yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things to remember about cartridges and design and you got to remember history. So the 7 rum was introduced into Sammy in, I'm going from memory here, 96 or 97. A heavy 7mm bullet.
Was it before the 300 Ultra, Greg? Didn't mean to cut you off, but was it before?
No.
The 300 Ultra was like 99.
No. Yeah, the 300 Ultra was first.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. And then the 7 rum after that. So, but you have to remember that back then, 170 grain or 160 grain was a heavy bullet for 7mm.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was no 180 or 190 or 200 grain 7mm bullets at that point. Right? And also the Ultra Mags are called that. They're called Ultra Mags because it is the largest cartridge that would fit in a Remington 700 action from a cartridge loaded length point of view and a diameter point of view. Right? It has a slightly rebated rim versus most other beltless shells. but it's essentially the biggest thing that you can fit in a 700 action. That's why it's called the Ultra Magnum.
Yeah. So it's three. Yeah, it was 0102 for the 7 rum, and then it was 3.6 overall.
Yeah. 3.6 was what would fit in a, if I remember right, in a BDL.
Yeah.
BDL.
Yeah.
So yeah, why it's not popular is you can't. Now you can. Everybody's making custom guns, but then you had to stay in that 3.6 and.
Well, fuck. You could take this 7 rum, put a 195 hanging all the way out there, and it'll fit an R mag up to 3.950, which is
Well, and I think the Nosler came out and kind of stole the thunder.
Yes.
The 7 Ultra. And Remington, as we all know, had their issues, so they didn't support it real well.
That's true. You guys did mention the throating on the 7 rum.
Mm-hmm.
As it was introduced into SAMI, it has a fairly long freebore diameter, or freebore length, I should say. That is, in my opinion, was part of the drawback to that design. And it was done that way for safety reasons and the powders that were available at the time.
Mm.
I would say its biggest demise is you made a 300 Ultra. Who the hell would want a 7 rum?
Yeah. I like the 300. The 300 has a fairly long throat too, because we don't have to, we could order a SAMI throat and then load a 215 and it sits on the lands about 3.930 long in length. So it definitely had a longer than normal. We don't have to order a custom reamer for that.
The 300 rum was the first of the Ultramag family that I designed. I did try to future-proof it as best I could as far as freeboard length goes. But again, you have to remember the time frame then. 180 grain bullet was your typical heavyweight 30 cal bullet at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There was some 190 grain Match Kings, but a 210 or a 215, those things were rare if they even existed at all.
Now there's a 250.
Yeah.
258 tip.
Greg, I appreciate you because I bought one. I swear it was like 99. I had one late 99, 2000s, and I have shot more animals with a 300 Ultra than any other cartridge put together. So I appreciate you.
And we were warned we were going to shoot those barrels out, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, there you go.
That's the thing that drives me crazy everywhere. Well, it's a barrel burner, and I'm like, how many fucking barrels have you burnt down? Well, none. And I'm like, so why isn't it an issue to you? It drives me insane.
Yeah. I have a 300 rum with a 20-inch barrel that's still going strong.
Well, in a Remington 700, and I simply don't have the shoulder to shoot the barrel out.
It's crazy.
I had a shoulder replacement before that.
300. I think you covered it. I only had 2 more. 300 SOM. You said you guys are working on that.
Yep.
And then
that's one he said should be fairly easy.
Yep. The 22 arc. Any future for that there over there?
Or even just 6 arc.
Or 6 arc.
Never say never, but right now that's not on the radar screen.
Oh, one more. Will they publish annealing codes for specific lots?
No, because honestly, I do not own an amp annealer.
Oh, fair enough.
We do have, we can do that on our side. I mean, basically, the guy that asked that question is worried about burning one piece of brass.
Yeah,
one piece.
Not worried about that. You guys must have some fancy custom high dollar annealer over there.
Yes. Yeah, we're basically, we're annealing a shell in production basically 1 a second.
There you go. A little faster than what we're doing.
So you guys covered your QC. Does like one person look at every freaking stick?
No, we typically run the case line operation with 2 or 3 operators on the floor that rotate around the different machines throughout the day. And just depends on what end of the floor they're working at the time. And that operator takes care of keeping the machines fed and running and any of the quality tests that are needed for that machine at that, when the time comes.
Roughly about a third of their shift would be spent at the inspection table, looking for either cosmetic problems or other reject issues, as Greg described earlier, that would be safety issues. And then one final quality check occurs at the retail pack out, which is the next handoff from the case line. And as Greg mentioned, every piece of brass passes through one of our operators' hands,
or maybe even mine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Greg and I on any given day, you'll see both of us at the inspection table as well, doing quality inspection. Whether that's just making sure that we keep our hands on that. One of our QC monitors at the inspection at the computer control board that has all of our measurement gauges through the production process. We are measuring at the same time the last what the yield is on the last 5 baskets inspected. And there are icons that will alert either an operator or a shift supervisor or one of our engineers, Greg, Michael, or myself, if trends begin to run negative of what our specs are. So, a lot of safety nets in the process for quality control, including cosmetic issues.
Let's say a customer wanted to request a new cartridge from you guys. Do you guys have some type of voting tool or something on your website where somebody can submit a cartridge request?
We don't really have a tool per se. The best thing to do is send a request to sales@atlasdg.com. We do kind of keep a running total internally of that. And, the number of votes is a factor in determining which product we look at next. But, if I turned around at the end of this and I had 10,000 votes for a 22 ARC versus some other cartridge, again, it's only one factor. That one's probably not going to bubble up to the top anytime soon.
Huh. So you're still so you want people to continue, submitting contact form or whatever for cartridge requests. Okay.
Yeah, just an email to sales is the best way, and perhaps we'll see if we can do a some sort of a voting thing.
Yeah.
The problem with that is opening it up to the public. It's unless we figure out how to code it so that you can only vote on one IP address, can only vote one time.
Yeah.
Whatever. Things get weird. So we do listen to our dealers a lot in that regard as well.
There's probably a plug-in for voting somehow, some way.
There is, like, on Rockslide, there's a lot of members, and we'll want something, so we'll say, well, we got to email them, and then pretty soon I'll hear from that company directly saying, tell your people to stop emailing me.
Yes.
Yeah.
The floodgates have opened.
Yes. So what is that? So sales@atlasdg.com, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, there you go.
You got any more questions?
I'm good, man.
I'm out, but I do have it's not a question, but I pay attention to trends, and good or bad, Lapua has always been the benchmark of brass. And I hear your name either passing them or with them all the time. So kudos, boys. You're doing the right thing.
Nice.
Well, thank you very much for that. When we started ADG and we decided that cartridge brass was going to be our first manufactured product that we're going to produce. Lapua is the gold standard, and that's what we wanted to emulate or exceed. And that's been our goal, and it continues to be our goal. We want to make the best brass in the world. Many would tell you that that's Lapua, and I'm honored to be mentioned in the same sentence as Lapua.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks
Making
for
the best brass for the best customers. We would be remiss if we didn't say that we were blessed with good feedback from customers to keep us on our toes from a quality control standpoint. And the best brass is only as good as the shooters that's putting it into a chamber and putting a projectile down range.
There you go.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming on, and we'll have to talk to you guys again in the not so distant.
Yeah, if you ever got something new coming out, or you just want to talk a little bit, feel free to reach out, and we'll reach out to you guys again too, I'm sure.
All right, guys.
Appreciate you.
it.
Thank you.
See ya.
Take care.